Dear honorable guests, dear Father Holodomor, ladies and gentlemen, Association of Ukrainian Women, Association of Ukrainian in Great Britain, and I are pleased to offer you a warm welcome in our community. This year, Ukraine marks the 85th anniversary of the Holodomor of 1932-1933 and holding all planned events dedicated to this date at the highest level should become a matter of honor. For decades, the USSR denied outright that famine had taken place, and Ukrainians couldn't talk about Holodomor until Ukraine became independent. And the President of Ukraine, Viktor Yushchenko, has declared 2008 as the year of remembrance to commemorate the victims of the Holodomor. In accordance with the information from the Ukrainian Ministry of the Foreign Affairs, 14 countries has recognized the Holodomor as an act of genocide. And Ukrainian communities around the world are being called to action to take specific steps toward future recognition of the Holodomor as genocide against the Ukrainian people. Perpetrated by Soviet Union. Today we are holding commemorating event to remember the victims of the Holodomor, and I would like to introduce our honorable guest, the Honorable Member of Parliament for Gloucester, Richard Graham, the Right Worship Mayor of Gloucester, Joanne Brown, the Deputy Mayor and Sheriff of Gloucester, Howard Hyman, the Concert of Gloucester, David Brown, the priest of Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church for the Good Shepherd, Father Lubomir Pedluski, the Reverend Ralph Fitter, Vicar of the St. Paul and St. Stephen Church, Gloucester. Once again, welcome to our community and enjoy the evening. And now I would like to say a few words in Ukrainian language for our Ukrainian guests. Шановні почесні гості, шановний отець Любомир, панове, Асоціація українських жінок, Асоціація українців у Великій Британії щиросердечно вітаю вас у нашій громаді. Цього року Україна відзначає 85-ту річницю Голодомору 1932-1933 років та проводить заплановані заходи, щоб на великому рівні провести їх у всьому світі. Протягом десятиліть СССР прямо заперечував, що Голодомор стався, і українці не могли говорити про Голодомор, поки Україна не стала незалежною. Президент України Віктор Ющенко оголосив 2008 рік роком пам'яті жертв Голодомору. Відповідно до інформації Міністерства закордонних справ України, 14 країн визнали Голодомор актом геноциду. А українські громади по всьому світу закликають до дій, вживати конкретних заходів щодо того, щоб визнати Голодомор, щоб більше країн визнали Голодомор. Сьогодні ми проводимо урочисту подію, і я хочу представити наших гостей. Високоповажний член парламенту Глостер Річард Греєм, шанобливий мер Глостеру Джоан Браун, заступник мера та шериф Глостеру Ховард Хайман, священик Української греко-католицької церкви доброго пастиря отець Любомир, преподобна Фіттера, вікарій святого Павла, святого Степана Глостеру. Ще раз ласкаво просимо до нашої громади. Тільки хочу сказати, що сьогодні ми будемо показувати фільм «Гіркі жнива». Прошу батьків звернути увагу, що цей фільм має вікову категорію від 15 років. Прошу батьків відповідально віднестися до цього, і буде на вашій відповідальності, якщо діти будуть дивитися цей фільм. Для дітей внизу відкрита школа, і якщо діти хочуть бавитися в школі, то батьки можуть прийти до школи і там з ними побути. Тепер я передаю слово пані Марії. Дякую.
Добрий вечір. Good evening. So, as well as our guests, we're also joined by Mrs. Olga Zvergo-Hlib, our head of Women's Association, and we have Evhen Nebesniak, who represents our Association of Ukrainians in Great Britain, our Gloucester branch, and of priest Father Lubomir. So this part is going to be in English so that our guests can understand, and I'm just going to explain a few things. So the Gloucester Ukrainian community warmly welcomes our guests, and we thank you for joining us as we commemorate the 85th anniversary of Holodomor. The word Holodomor means death by starvation and comes from two Ukrainian words meaning holod, meaning hunger, and morete, meaning to kill. As well as this local commemoration, there are 4 regional Holodomor events taking place today at Coventry Cathedral, Leeds Cathedral, the Holodomor Memorial in Edinburgh, and Westminster Abbey. And before I start to explain a little bit of the history, we're just going to ask you if you would stand for 1 minute's silence. Thank you. Thank you. I should mention that tomorrow in our church we will be having a memorial service as well, and you're welcome to attend that. Starts at 11. And if you ever have reason to visit Cheltenham Cemetery, you'll find there a monument dedicated to those innocent victims who died during the Holodomor. And perhaps if you're there, you might stop for a moment to think and pray and reflect. So our programme this evening starts with a very short discourse explaining why we commemorate this famine. We'll have a short time of prayer and reflection and light some candles. Ukrainians, you may know, are very hospitable, and we'll usually provide you with a table bursting with food. But on this occasion, when talking of millions starving, that doesn't seem appropriate. So we'll invite you to share with us in a moment a simple supper of some traditional Ukrainian soup, borscht, and some bread. The bread will be on the table, and we'll also offer you on the table some smetana, which is sour cream, which is usually served with borscht, but you help yourself if you like it or not. So, then, following that, we'll have a showing of the film Bitter Harvest, which is a 2017 romantic action drama film set in Ukraine during the Holodomor. Please be aware, parents, as Pana Ola said in Ukrainian, that this film is classified as 15 and may have scenes not suitable for children. And we ask that parents respect the solemnity of this occasion and make use of our downstairs schoolroom, which is open should your children become restless. On the table you'll find a small bag of organic wheat. We invite you to take this home with you as a reminder of this evening, but also with the hope that you will never feel the pain of hunger. During the 1930s, the Soviet Union was dominated by Joseph Stalin, who sought to reshape Soviet society with aggressive economic planning. As leader of the Soviet Union, he constructed an authoritarian state whose policies have been blamed for millions of deaths. During his time as leader of the Soviet Union, Stalin made frequent use of his secret police, prisons, and nearly unlimited power to reshape Soviet society. Stalin took on Ukrainian nationalism and drove forward his policies of dekulakization and collectivization. Collectivization was expected to be with the strongest resistance from the kulaks, as they had most to lose, and from Ukrainian peasants. A kulak was considered to be a rich farmer who typically owned 12 acres of land, a cow, a horse, 10 sheep, a pig, and maybe about 20 chickens. Stalin launched collectivization with the call to liquidate the kulaks as a class, even though no satisfactory definition of the class of kulaks has ever been identified. Dekulakization was launched in December 1929, with the most intense period lasting from January to March 1930, and coinciding with the main push for collectivization. As a result of the dekulakization and collectivization, 282,000 peasant households disappeared in Ukraine. Some 100,000 kulaks were shot, and almost 10 million peasants were deported to the Arctic in cattle trucks, causing the death of about 3 million people. By the end of this period, there were no real kulaks left. Kulaks were seen as a particular threat to collectivization and were therefore targeted for destruction. Arrests, expropriation of property, deportations and executions spread to all peasants who resisted orders to join collective farms. By 1931, 75% of Ukrainians working in collective farms, where productivity fell and wastage increased, at the same time as grain quotas for state use were being increased. The draconian quotas led to starvation on an unimaginable scale. The quotas demanded by the state could not be met, but in spite of protests by some Ukrainian officials, even harsher laws were passed, forbidding local use of grain until quotas had been met, depriving those collectives who could not meet their quotas of all rights to trade, internal passports to prevent innocent victims leaving to search for food, and execution of those caught hiding or stealing food. The Holodomor was a barbaric and systematic starvation of more than 7 million Ukrainians over a period of 18 months in 1932 to 33, on one of the most fertile lands in Europe. You'll notice our flag is blue at the top and yellow at the bottom, representing the wheat and the sky, one of the most fertile lands in Europe. And this included a third of all children in Ukraine who perished as a result. The number of those who died during those 18 months was unimaginable, but it's equivalent to the number of students in the UK, or Wembley Stadium filled almost 80 times over. Estimates of the dead vary, partly because records were falsified or destroyed or simply stopped being kept, and partly because of debate about how many deaths were directly attributable to starvation. But it is widely accepted that at the height of the famine in the spring of 1933, 17 people died each minute. 1,041 people died each hour. 25,000 people died each day. In a few moments, we will light 7 candles to symbolize those who died. Our candles will be lit by members of our community, our priest, Father Holodomor. Mrs. Stockrin and Mr. Pilipchuk, representing the first generation of Ukrainians to arrive in the UK as displaced persons after the war. Helena Besniak, representing Ukrainian descendant, born in the UK of Ukrainian parents. And Natalia, who's come to live in England from the Ukraine. And Zahar and Natalia, representing our youngest in our community.
Отче наш, ти що єси на небесах, нехай святиться ім'я Твоє, нехай прийде царство Твоє, нехай буде воля Твоя, як на небі, так і на землі. Хліб наш насущний дай нам сьогодні, і прости нам провини наші, як і ми прощаємо винуватцям нашим. І не веди нас у спокусу, але визволи нас від лукавого. Амінь. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Господи Ісусе Христе Боже, упокій душу усопших слуг Божих, які відійшли вічних 32-33 роки, час Голодомору і геноциду українського народу, яких ми поіменно їх всіх згадуємо, і сотвори їм вічною пам'ять. Вічная пам'ять, вічная пам'ять. Вічної пам'ять. В ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. В ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. В ім'я Отця і Сина і Святого Духа. Дякую.
Thank you, Father. Some journalists, particularly two British journalists, Malcolm Muggeridge and Gareth Jones, personally witnessed the effects of the famine and reported on it in British and other newspapers. And as a result, were subjected to a Soviet-led campaign to vilify and discredit them. Many organisations, including the International Committee of the Red Cross, Save the Children Fund, and the Committee of International Women's Organisations, offered food and other aid, but this was refused, and all reports of famine were treated by the Soviet government as anti-Soviet propaganda. I would like to now introduce Natalia. Ukrainians maybe over the years have been reluctant to talk about the impact of Holodomor because it's such a painful event. But Natalia today is going to come and tell us a little story of her family.
When I was asked to share my grandma's first reaction was, no, I'm not prepared for that. And I don't even know where to start. But on my way home, I was keep thinking about it. And I thought, I should change my mind. I should pass on some memories from my grandmother. She used to live in central part of Ukraine, and actually, as you mentioned, she was one of the daughters of those kulaks. I used to visit her over my summer holidays, and I remember her tragic stories about her difficult life in Soviet Ukraine, and especially about her childhood during 1932 and 33. At this time, she was 8 years old girl. She used to tell me that her mom wouldn't let her go outside the house because she had stories about children disappearing, and it was feared that they could have been eaten. She was always keeping an eye on her, and if she was going outside, she usually seen neighbors were taking dead bodies outside of their houses on the street, and they couldn't bury them because they didn't have strength to do that. So somebody would come over and pick them up later, and she said it was horrible, horrible, nasty smell all over around the village. One time, her mom found a bit of a rotten potato in the field. And as soon as she cooked it, soldiers came into the house, and they didn't take the potato away. They just threw it on the floor and stomped it. So her mom fell on her knees and started to cry and scream, asking them, "Why are you doing that?" But she said, as a little girl, I grabbed my mom and I asked her, "Can you please be quiet so they will leave us alone?" After all those stories, when she was 10, she didn't cry, and I asked her, "Why are you not crying?" And she was saying to me, "There is no more tears left. I cried them out a long time ago. And then when I was coming back to school, I couldn't understand why we are not learning about that. Why nobody telling us those stories? Why nobody trying to tell us what happened? So only in 1991, after Ukraine became independent, some stories started to appear, but not everyone believed in them because they were too horrible to accept. So for more than 50 years since the tragedy, the regime was able to suppress memories of it. Under threat of repression, people were forbidden to mourn their relatives. Victims of Holodomor, they couldn't speak truth my parents couldn't speak truth as I was younger generation. So I believe all atrocities of this proportion like Holodomor have to be recorded in the history and remembered, so mankind would not allow it to happen again, neither in Ukraine nor anywhere in the world.
Thank you, Natalia. You can tell that was a very difficult thing for her to share, so we really appreciate that you shared your memory of your grandmother. We believe that the Soviet policies that caused the famine were an engineered attack on the Ukrainian nationalism, or more broadly on all Ukrainian people, in order to prevent the uprisings. We also believe that the famine falls under the legal definition of genocide. And this has been recognised by many governments, including Australia, Canada, the United States, the Vatican City, Poland, and of course Ukraine. The campaign for remembrance is not about politics or assigning blame. We believe that the Holodomor deserves wider recognition, and that Stalin's hidden purge against the Ukrainian nation should be an integral part of the mainstream narrative of 20th century history. In highlighting the barbarity of the Holodomor, we hope to turn a horrific statistic into a collective memory of individual lives and give back to the innocent victims the dignity they were robbed of. Once again, we thank you for joining us and hope you will take away with you an understanding of the impact of Holodomor on the hearts of all Ukrainians still today. Glory to Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. And now we'd ask you to please stand while we sing our national anthem.
Who are lucky enough to come and enjoy your hospitality. That almost worked. So really on behalf of the distinguished chain gang, your mayor, sheriff, mayor's consort, and all the rest of us who've come as your guests, it is one thing to have a bowl of borscht in a restaurant. It is quite another to have it made by Ukrainians in the Ukrainian Club in Gloucester. It was not widely known or talked about at that time. It was referred to rather in the same way that the famine in China after the Great Leap Forward, which of course was a huge leap backward, was referred to. Nobody really knew in the mid-1970s in Britain quite how vast was the suffering and devastation in the Ukraine. And I still think today that we're only still through her and her memories, and all of you who can talk to those of the older generation, like Es's mother and Mr. Polichuk, is it? That if we can capture that oral history and those memories, then it will be something to pass down for generations. And there's one particular way that I think in Gloucester we can help, because when I created the Gloucester History Festival in 2011, part of what we were trying to do is the charitable aim of allowing different communities in Gloucester to come and tell your stories of how it is and was that you came to come to this city, because all of us are immigrants in one way or another. Some have come from a mile or two away, some have come from thousands of miles. But those roots are incredibly important culturally. They are who you are, who we are. My sister-in-law here today, Kate, has lived for 37 years in America. But her roots are deep in Africa, where my wife's family come from Kenya and Zimbabwe. And in their hearts, they will always carry that with them, just as I hope all of you will carry your roots from Ukraine and these gorgeous dresses and shirts that some of you are wearing. So in this city, in this very multicultural city, a city with a primary school of 45 nationalities only half a mile away, those roots are to be treasured, even as you all treasure being part of Gloucester and British citizens today. And that's where I think the History Festival can help capture your historical roots and cultural feelings and share those with the rest of Gloucester who may not know about them as well as you do. So a huge thank you. This is a really inspiring gathering, and I'm sure we're all going to be shaken a bit by the film to come. So this is a good moment for me to sit down and thank Father for having led us through our Lord's Prayer in Ukrainian, and for all the good work that you do for the community here in Gloucester. And I know there will be a huge celebration on the 6th of January, which I will try to come to as well. Dziękuję.